Hi, I'm Liselle and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things writing, traditional publishing, and a little bit of reading. And this is the 2024 end of the year wrap up. What this video is I like to, at the end of the year, talk about some of my highs as an author, some of my low moments. I chat a little bit. I have a kind of casual reflection on how the year went. I discuss kind of my hopes for the future. And that's really all that this video is. If you're wanting to know about updates to the projects I've been working on in the new year, I do a like a project update where I talk about how everything kind of ended, everything that I worked on from like the middle of 2024 to the end of 2024, and like what new projects I'm going to be working on coming up. So if that's something you're interested in, that video is going to come out in the new year. I'm also going to do a separate video probably talking about my reading and like my favorite books of the year, that sort of thing. In the past, I've like packaged that into this video, but I decided not to do that this year and to leave that for the new year. Yeah, so this video is really just kind of like, I guess, a little bit of like a chit chat, reflection sort of thing. Yeah, so if you're here to hear about my like personal feelings about how my year went as an author, then that's really what this is gonna be. And I will have timestamps down below, so if you want to jump around to what you're most interested in, you are welcome to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the highs of the year. So these are the really positive things that happened to me this year. So some of those things, the Tender Beast launch. Tender Beast is my fifth overall novel, my fourth young adult novel that came out, a YA psychological thriller / horror about a wealthy family and the potential fact that their brother may or may not be a serial killer. So that was the book that came out this year. I was really excited to launch that. I also like did like a really like, I just took like a chill day off. Like I didn't do any sort of event or like big to do. I just kind of like enjoyed my time at home and like kind of took it as like the way I celebrate my birthday, just kind of like took it as like a nice relaxed kickback time. And I really enjoyed doing that. I feel like I have for most of my books really felt like I need to do this like big event, and I think this year I was like, I actually don't need to if I don't want to, so I just kind of took that time for myself, and that was really nice. So that was really exciting. Another high of the year, it was really exciting to get to talk about A Mastery of Monsters in like, I was able to share the cover, and of course the really big news, I was able to sell that third book to my publisher. So Mastery of Monsters will be a trilogy. I was really excited about that. That was something that was like really stressing me out, kind of not knowing whether or not that was going to happen. And I really kind of had conceptualized this as a 3-book series, and I didn't know what I would do if I wasn't able to do it that way. And so it was kind of like a bit of a stressful time working on the book without being sure how things would go. So I was really happy that I was able to sell that and my publisher was on board, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited about, you know, A Mastery of Monsters in general, getting to share that YA dark academia fantasy that I'm so excited about next year. But it was just like a huge weight off my shoulders to have sold that third book. And another big high of this year was kind of like really for me having Delicious Monsters be acknowledged as a success by my publisher. For those of you who may not know, Delicious Monsters is my third novel that came out, and it's a YA thriller, like YA psychological thriller / horror. It's a very important book to me. To date, I do still believe it's the best book I've written, and I'm really proud of it. And it was a little bit of a difficult time because my publisher put a lot of effort into the book, and I got a lot of wonderful support for the book, and then kind of first week sales came in and it was viewed as disappointing. And from there, of course, things were very different. The book picked up a lot of traction, and it did very, very well in the long run, to the point where it almost earned out, which was my largest advance to date. It almost earned that out in under a year. And once I was able to kind of be like, point to that as like, what, like it did do well. I, you know, got an acknowledgement that it, in fact, yes, it did do well. Yeah, I think it was just like, it was very much a psychological victory for me, because it was such a difficult time feeling like my book hadn't really, I guess, kind of lived up to its potential. And that was a really hard time for me. 2023 was a rough year for me. And I really had to do a lot of kind of emotional digging to get back to really feeling like, reminding myself that this book that I love so much is a success, and allowing myself to kind of feel the joy of just having a book that I love so much. And I was able to fight my way back to that. And so it was nice in the end to kind of be like, oh, so I was right. And to really, I feel like it really affirmed for me a lot of things that I kind of felt, which is, I mean, I do think that publishing puts a lot of weight on first week sales, when in fact the lifetime of the book is quite a bit more impactful, and you kind of don't know what would happen. Yeah, so I feel like it really just affirmed that for me. It also affirmed for me that like putting so much weight on monetary success, when it's so like in flux like that, is also really like not, you know, firm for me that that's not a good thing to do. So but overall, I was very pleased about that. I was very pleased to see how well it is still doing. So yeah, you know, I always thank you all for supporting all of my books, but thank you for that too. And then finally, I did a new author photo. I was very, very excited about it. This is my first professional author photo. I went to a photographer in town and like had my photo professionally taken. I wanted something like that. I did try and do it myself at first, and I didn't like it. I didn't think it was good. And so I went to a professional. It was also like very affordable. I don't know why I thought it was going to be like so super expensive, but it was actually incredibly affordable. And I'm really, really happy with the results. And so I'm just like, I can't wait to, you know, have my new set of books with my new author photo. So that was great. And now for the lows of the year, because it cannot always be sunshine and rainbows. And to me, it's important to be able to talk about both things. I feel like, especially with like social media, you know, so many things can be such a highlight reel. You often aren't posting about things that are upsetting you or posting about kind of like quote unquote failures. And so I do like to be able to talk about these too, and I do feel like there's a lot to be learned from it and that experience. So, I mean, the first kind of low of the year was that, as I talked about, being so stressed about whether or not that third A Mastery of Monsters book would sell. Yeah, it was stressful. It was stressful because I just truly didn't know what I was going to do with that story if they weren't going to take on the third book. And so that was a bit of a challenge to go through. And it also kind of put, in some ways, put us in a little bit of a tight spot, because it was something that I obviously wanted. And so the thing about publishing and like contracts and offers is like, the more leverage you have, the kind of better deal that you can eke out for yourself. And in the case in which you're like, please buy this extra book for my series so that I can finish my series, like, you have no leverage in that case, really. So yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult spot to be in, but I'm glad at the end of the day that I'm going to be able to tell the story the way I want, and I'm going to be able to do those 3 books. So that's what's kind of important to me, all in all. The next low of the year was UK stuff. So A Mastery of Monsters is the first book where we retained UK rights. In the past, we've sold World English, so this means that the publisher has the rights to sell it wherever in English. And so the publisher is the one in control of kind of submitting it to UK publishers and trying to solicit that. And the thing about that on our end is that there is a bit of opaqueness, in that we're not necessarily aware of kind of what's going on behind the scenes or what's happening. There's just like a significantly less control. And so because in my previous books, my publisher hadn't successfully sold any of the UK rights, when it came to A Mastery of Monsters, we wanted to retain UK rights, so that we could have our own chance to try and sell the rights ourselves, in which, again, you have more control, you have more transparency around the process. And so that's really what we wanted. And so the Mastery of Monsters series was sold for North American rights, which means my publisher has the rights to sell the rights and publish in the US and Canada only, and we have all other rights. So we went on submission to try and sell A Mastery of Monsters to UK publishers, to try and get a UK publisher on board who would publish it in the United Kingdom for us. And what that led to ultimately is that no one in the UK made an offer on the book, so they did not want to purchase it, and that was rough. It was rough, man. The UK is just, it's, in comparison to the US, it's a smaller market, but I find that the UK does a lot of like really great things with their marketing. There's also a lot of very popular UK book boxes such as Illumicrate and Fairy Loot, and I feel, I don't know this for sure, but I feel that they don't take you on if you don't have a UK publisher on board. And so it kind of like closes you out of that market. And I do have books that are sold in the UK because my US publisher ships the US copies to the UK to be sold there. But it's not quite the same as like having a UK publisher publish it and have that sort of level of support and distribution. And so it's better to be able to my knowledge, better to be able to sell those UK rights. And so it sucks. It sucks. It sucks to be like, I don't understand why the US is like excited about this and they'll want to buy it, but it's so like just not of interest in this market. And it's kind of like, it's hard. It really is. You're going on submission. And so when you're going on submission, rejection is difficult. At least in this case, it wasn't the sort of thing where I was like, oh, A Mastery of Monsters is never going to get published. Of course it's going to get published in the US. It would have been great to be able to publish a book in the UK, but that is just not something that happened. And yeah, honestly, it's disappointing. It sucks. Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't really know what else to do. But I'm glad that we retained the rights. I'm glad that we gave it our best shot. You know, my agent is always a rock star, and she put forward her absolute best effort with it. It just kind of didn't work out. And really, by the time we kind of got it to UK publishers, it even was kind of like running a little bit late. Like, people were kind of filling up their 2025 time slots. And so it just didn't end up working out. There wasn't quite room for it. So that, yeah, wasn't fun. And the final low of the year is in regards to my adult thriller. I previously calling it hashtag the newlyweds. I don't know if I stuck with that or if I said different things. I truly cannot remember at this point in time because I changed things around so many times. But it used to be called, was it hashtag the couples retreat? Did I ever call it the newlyweds? I think I did. Anyway, it was about a couples retreat. And it was about this couple, and they go to this sort of like revolutionary retreat to try and fix their relationship, and shit goes down, and that's basically the whole premise of it. And so worked on that really hard and was finally able to get that onto submission, and unfortunately at this point it's been on submission for something like 5 or 6 months at around the time this time, and yeah, that's kind of where the status is. Yeah, I mean, it's not great. it's not great. I've said in vlogs before that for me personally, like in myself, in my body, I kind of think the journey's done. You never know what might happen. Something might still occur, something might still pop up. Efforts are still being made. Again, Rockstar Literary Agent is still working on it and following up with people and checking in. And again, you never know what might happen in the future. But it's one of those things where I kind of feel like within myself, I need to move on from it and think about trying something new, doing something new, and kind of moving on to other projects and like pulling away mental focus on it, because it's not, I mean, putting mental focus on your book on submission is never really helpful because you have no control over it. You can't, you can't make publishers decide to offer on it or buy it. Like, my part has already been done in writing and editing the book and making it the best that I can be. There's not really anything additional that I can do at this point, really, unless I'm given kind of a revise and resubmit, something similar to that. Yeah, so it's just kind of as is, but I think in those first little bit when you're kind of like very hopeful of like early offers, I feel like I had a lot more mental energy in it, and I just had to like pull right away from that. It was just kind of like affecting my everyday mood too much, and I think certainly that was kind of the biggest disappointment of this year. Yeah, I mean, it really was. I started, it's one of those things, both with the UK submission and with this, I started to become my own enemy in that it was the sort of comparison is the thief of joy sort of thing, in which I really started to feel like, am I, like, I guess I'm just not as talented as other people, because you're looking around and again, people only shout usually about the successes, and so it felt like everyone was getting an adult book deal, everyone is selling to the UK, and so I really did get in my head and feeling like, wow, like, so I'm like the only loser that can't do this, you know what I mean? Even knowing that obviously that's not the case. There are lots of people who, you know, are struggling to sell books, struggling to, you know, get different foreign rights, that sort of thing. It was certainly not a me thing, but it certainly, yeah, I mean, it did kind of make me feel down on myself. I did really feel like, am I just I was like, I guess I'm just like less talented than a lot of other people, which is like, what, it's so not even one-to-one. And I know objectively that like the selling of books is in many ways very separate from the quality of books. Obviously the quality of books plays into the book selling, but there are very high quality books that do not sell all the time. That is just kind of the nature of it, because it is about, I mean, it's about selling, it's about capitalism, and there are more things involved in that than just like a quality book. It's so different. But I certainly, in my woe is me moments, again, this is about my woe is me moments, I certainly had many of those thoughts, and it was just kind of like a rough time. It really made me think of like when it was like, you know, 2020, and I'd been laid off from my job and I was struggling to find another job and I couldn't get any interviews, and I was just like, I don't understand, like, am I bad at this? Like, do I not have any, like, are these skills that I thought I had not actually existing? It's very easy to get in your head about those sorts of things. And it was so, I don't know, it felt a little bit like whiplash. Like I went on submission 3 times this year. 3 times. I went on submission with the 3rd Mastery of Monsters book. I went on submission to the UK with the Mastery of Monsters, and I went on submission with this adult, and it was just too much submission for 1 year. And I think if maybe I'd done 2 out of 3, I would have felt a little better. I would have been like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But instead it was like, I had the high of the 3rd Mastery of Monsters book, and I was like, cool. And then it was just like, pow, the UK doesn't want your book. Pow, adults don't want your book. It's just kind of like, it's a rough time. It's a rough time. And yeah, that's just what it was. And so those were yeah, tough moments for sure. But on the bright side, and moving over to some more positive things, in this kind of reflection, some things that I felt really worked well for me this year were definitely changing my mindset for other things. So I really had come into this year with the mindset of like, when I was releasing a book, to not get caught up in monetary success. When Tender Beast came out in that first week, I didn't look at the first week sales. I didn't look at the second week sales. I didn't look at any of those sales. The only time I actually ended up looking at the sales was when I did my whole video, I'll link it down below, in which I did a social media experiment where I posted every day for 90 days to see if it would have an effect on book sales. And so in that case, I did have to look at the book sales in order to check that. But otherwise, had not been looking at my book sales, haven't been looking at my like Goodreads like behind the scenes numbers of like how many people are shelving the books. I have had occasional times where I've been like, do I have like the 50 reviews on Amazon? So I went on Amazon to check if I had the 50 reviews, and I did. And so then I was like, okay, and I saw that I had like, I think, was it 1,000 Goodreads reviews? I don't know. It was some amount of Goodreads reviews where I was like, oh, okay, that's a good amount. But what mattered to me is that the emotional response, I was just like, okay, and just like kind of moved on. I was no longer, where in the past, like I would go and I'd like see my rating or I'd see my numbers or whatever, and I'd get so caught up in it, and I'd be like, like, why is this happening? Why are the numbers like that? And I'd have to go on like Goodreads and I want to see the breakdown of the different reviews and like see, why is my rating like this? And I want to see how many people are shelving it. How many shelves do I have compared to other people, or how many do I have? And like check on my sales and like, oh, is there a possibility that I'm making this sales or that sales? And it was just like, I just didn't do it. I just didn't do it. And wouldn't you know, I did feel better. I felt a lot better. I felt like I had such a good experience of launching Tender Beasts, and then I could focus on like the really positive things, like everybody that tagged me or talked about loving Tender Beasts or whatever, like that was great, that was amazing, and it was the thing that stuck in my mind. I had to I was updating my author CV for something. I thought I was gonna do something, I didn't need it. Anyway, I was updating it, and I was checking on the reviews, and I was like, did I get a starred review for this? I was like, I honestly can't remember. And I looked and I hadn't, but it felt like I had, because I was so focused on like the big positives of all the wonderful like feedback I'd gotten from readers on the book. And that was just the focus, and that was what I cared about. And it did make the release just feel so much better. I felt like I was so much happier about having released Tender Beasts than I have for any book in the past, because I feel like every other book I released in the past, I was so extra concentrated on that performance, on those monetary numbers, which I just learned did it really matter, because based on those numbers, Delicious Monsters like didn't do that well, whereas no, actually it did very, very well just over the long term. And oh, I looked at my royalty statements. I will say that I look at my royalty statements because I do find those interesting and I like to look at them. And Tender Beasts also did very well on the royalty statements. And so it was just kind of like, okay, like I could have a nice, wonderful, positive, chill experience launching my book. I was like, that's great. And that's the energy I'm bringing into the future. When I'm thinking about launching A Mastery of Monsters and all of that, of course, I wish all the wonderful things for my books. I always want great things to happen to my books, but I'm not putting pressure on some sort of monetary result. This series is a series I really love. I think it's so fun. I think it's so engaging, and whoever reads it, and that's amazing. And that's kind of it. I've done my piece, I've done my bit, and that's all. That's it, that's all. And I find that to be really helpful and really freeing. And I do think that that has made like a big positive difference. And as time goes on, I'm also walking myself back from the comparison, from the thief is the comparison of joy thing. I think like submission really like brought me right back into that. And I feel like every year I have to relearn something because I'll learn something and then something happens and it takes me back into a previous kind of state and I have to relearn it. And I think that was definitely the case of like comparing that really happened when I was in that submission experience, because it's that thing of just like, I just don't understand. And you're just looking for answers. Like that's really what it is. I was like, it's an uncontrolled situation and I was looking for some sort of answer, and just grasping at anything. Whereas now, you know, I understand these things are very different. I'm sure there are many other authors who are having a similar experience, struggling with UK rights, struggling to sell books in different age categories, struggling even to sell books in the same age category, because I know that a lot of people in my debut group had difficulty with that. I know other people having difficulty with that. And it's just like, it's an everyone experience. And it isn't really something that is like, even necessarily based on like I said, like book quality, whatever that is, because books are an art and art is subjective. But yeah, kind of a relearning, and I feel like I've settled back into that spot. I feel like I've really come through the whole kind of submission down fog, and I feel like I'm back on an uptick. I feel like I have renewed hope and vigor and interest in all of my stuff. Certainly working on the second A Mastery of Monsters book has just like I'm having such a good time with the story. The writing itself, I'm tired and I do wish I was done, but the actual like experience of it, I'm so pleased with the book. I'm so pleased with how the story is coming together, how the series is coming together. And thinking about projects in the future, which I'm going to talk about in my project book. In my project video, I have made some changes. I have done some different stuff, but the only thing I want to say is I'm following my dreams. I'm following my dreams. Which is so cheesy, but I really do feel like it is, because, you know, there was a period after submission where I was like, you just need to do what's like a sure thing. Like, you can't just be doing all this other stuff and like, who do you think you are, trying to like get into a different age category, like stay in your wheelhouse. And no, I'm not going to. Which is to say, I want to continue trying to publish an adult book, and I'm still gonna do that. And I'm gonna do that in the immediate future. I was gonna do it in the faraway future. Now I'm gonna do it in the immediate future to give you a little bit of a preview. And really, just be focused on the joy of the writing. And I really feel like that's where I am now. And I think part of that for me, because I'm gonna acknowledge privilege, because part of that for me is I looked at my finances and I realized that I was fine. I was fine. I think I was feeling a little bit paranoid, but I was like, everything is fine. You're fine. Everything is good. And so now that that feels settled, I feel like my brain and my author brain, I can focus on writing and projects and creativity. And regardless of whether or not the couples retreat ends up ultimately finding a home or becoming shelved or whatever, I still, somewhere in me, that story, that adult book that hits with whomever, with whichever editor, wherever, that is in me, and it's gonna happen. Yeah, I feel I feel filled up with more belief in myself, and that's really important. And I feel like I've reconnected to kind of when I was writing, I guess, kind of like Blood Like Magic, and writing that kind of first book, and like it felt like, you know, the world is your oyster, but you're also like, I don't know, maybe nothing happens, but being excited and committed committed to the story and the journey, however it turns out. And I feel like I've reconnected with that. And I'm really happy about that. And so I guess this will just transition straight into hopes for the future. I think things that I want to take with me into 2025 is that separation of monetary success versus the book as art, and how I feel about its success. I want to take that into 2025. I want to leave behind comparison, continue to leave behind obsession over sales data and GOODREADS numbers and all that stuff, and continue to take into 2025 excitement about creativity and projects. And yeah, like I can't wait to start talking about all my project stuff. Because I'm gonna be switching things up. I'm gonna be trying new things. I know that I am a pretty like regimented in my ways type person, but I don't know. I feel like maybe this is silly to say, but I feel like there's nothing like a failure to make you feel like you can do anything. I think just like there's nothing like kind of doing something on the straight and narrow the way you've always done it and just having it not work out to be like, you know what? I'll just try something different. I'll just try anything. Why not? And I feel like that's how I feel. Like I feel like I have been opened up to do whatever. And yeah, so that's the sort of energy that I'm taking with me into the new year, and I ultimately feel really good about it. But yeah, I think this is one of those times where it really became clear to me, even more so, that this author journey is not linear. Like you don't just go like this, it's like all over the place. You never know what's gonna happen. And I think I had like settled into a sort of comfort where I just kind of felt like, yeah, this will happen. This will happen. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being like optimistic and hopeful for that. When I was kind of, when I was doing my therapy, it was very much of like deciding the future, not like magical thinking into the future, but kind of using evidence from the past to help inform your present in order to kind of like circumvent like, the sort of catastrophizing thought process, which is something that was very, very familiar to me, and my anxiety. And so, yeah, I was using past basis of having sold, as like, maybe this will work out. Shouldn't have done that with the UK because that didn't work out at any point in the past. But I just felt like, yeah, I think this will go. And, it didn't go that way. And I've made it through it. And I'm on the other side and I'm doing good. And I feel like it's, you keep going, and I'm still content to keep going. This is still my dream. This is still my ideal career. This is still the space in which I want to operate. And so I just have more time to try new things, do new things, and see what the future holds. So hopefully you have enjoyed this yapping with me. This is I don't know how long this video is going to be. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's shorter than usual. But I'm glad that you came along with me for the ride. Comment down below what's something that you're proud of doing in 2024. If you want to, you can share your own kind of like highs and lows sorts of things, and we can talk about that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the new year. I didn't say bye in time, I'm sorry. We'll start off better next year. We'll start off better in 2025.